So, as expected when it comes to Sid Colson and anyone in the WNBA, when it comes to all of them, once you joined the Indiana Fever, the old WNBA fans that loved you, they adored you, they called you the face of the league. But once you joined the Indiana Fever, that is over. That's over.
Fans are losing it because once again the WNBA has found itself in the middle of a mess that they created. Sydney Colson, one of the most outspoken and entertaining players in the league, has suddenly gone from being hyped as a face of the W to now being dragged and basically canceled just because she said out loud what everyone else has been thinking about the refs. And honestly, you couldn't script this nonsense any better if you tried. The second you put on that Indiana Fever jersey, the rules of engagement change. It doesn't matter who you were before, how funny you were, how loved you were, or even if the league itself used to promote you. The moment you line up next to Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, or Lexi Hull, you're instantly public enemy number one for the same fans that once screamed your name. That's exactly what's happening to Sydney Colson right now. Do you think the league is really trying to silence players like Sydney Colson, or is this just insecure fans overreacting because they can't stand the truth? Drop your thoughts below. So, let's lay it out. She makes a post calling out refs for blatantly trying to tilt games, specifically saying Kelsey Mitchell takes constant hard fouls that would never be ignored if it was a different star. And she wasn't wrong. If you've watched this season, Kelsey's been hammered on drives more times than we can count, but somehow whistles don't exist in those moments. Colson even joked that she should rope in her sister to pursue legal action because the assaults were getting ridiculous. That's her personality. Sarcastic, blunt, a little wild. It's what made fans love her when she was an ace.
And then all the responses people responding, I shit you not, responding saying that Kelsey Mitchell, and this is why I think this is a hilarious thing, where it's like they immediately call her MAGA. Because she said a referee was trying to give the game to the Sparks.
But now, the reaction was pure meltdown. Suddenly, the same people who once clipped her interviews and shared her jokes are calling her mega, Karen, toxic, and saying she's ruining the league. Over what? Saying refs were crooked? When has that not been the conversation in basketball for the last 50 years? The funniest part is that it's not even new behavior for her. She's been calling out refs and using that same sarcastic tone for years. But the double standard is clear. When she was clowning on other teams or cracking jokes about non-Fever situations, it was hilarious, shareable, and got her labeled the funniest player in the WNBA. Now that she's wearing a Fever uniform and pointing out the same garbage officiating that Fever fans have been screaming about all season, suddenly she's the villain. It's not that her tone changed, it's that the target did. And it proves what Fever fans have known. The hate isn't about personality, it's about the jersey. This isn't about Sydney Colson. It's about silencing anyone who calls out the corruption and the ridiculous bias against Indiana.
Copy that. So the Indiana Fever come into here.
And let's be clear, the refs have been brutal. We're not talking about one missed call or a 50-50 judgment. We're talking about repeated no calls when players are literally getting shoved out of the lane, arms wrapped around their necks, bodies flying. We're talking about the same refs who will hand out texts for attitude, but swallow the whistle when Caitlin Clark is hacked on a 3, or when Aaliyah Boston is mugged under the rim.
Now, mind you, that shot clock was not moving at all when she first grabbed that ball. The shot clock was not moving, fam. Let me go back. Let's go back. I'm gonna get a quick play. I'm trying to dodge the copyright, but pay attention to the shot clock simultaneously while hitting De'Erica Hamby's hand right here. Watch this. That shot clock did not move at all, fam. That shot clock, fam, the shot clock didn't move not one bit. Yeah, I used the double negative. Didn't move not one bit.
The outrage when Colson said the quiet part out loud tells you everything. The league doesn't want players pulling back the curtain. They don't want fans being reminded that outcomes might not be just about talent or execution. They want the illusion of fairness, not the messy truth. And Colson just bulldozed through that illusion. cracking jokes about refs trying to hand the game to the Sparks, and it set off alarms. The instant response from certain WNBA diehards was to drag her character. It wasn't enough to disagree or argue the point. They went straight to the political playbook. Call her MAGA. Call her problematic. Paint her as a traitor to the cause. You'd think she endorsed building a wall, not complained about whistles in a basketball game. That's how ridiculous this has gotten. And the hypocrisy is crazy. You have announcers openly roasting Angel Reese on air for missing layups and getting me-bounds, and that gets brushed off as playful. But Sydney Colson makes a sarcastic tweet about refs rigging games, and suddenly, she's enemy number one. The standards couldn't be more obvious.
Kelsey Mitchell and star don't belong in the same sentence. She's third in the league in scoring on the sixth best team in the league. So yes, Kelsey Mitchell is a star player. Like, she's third in the league in scoring on the sixth ranked team in the league. I'm sorry, like, if that's not a star, I have no idea what a star is.
Now, here's where it gets even funnier. People were quick to say Kelsey Mitchell doesn't belong in any star conversation, trying to discredit the entire point Colson was making. Never mind that Mitchell is third in the league in scoring on the sixth-ranked team. If that's not a star, then what the hell is? But the hate for Fever players runs so deep that the only acceptable take is one that diminishes them. Colson saying her teammate deserves star treatment was enough to set off the mob. And notice, it's always Fever players. You don't see this kind of hostility toward middling players on other squads. You don't see fans turning their favorites into villains the moment they defend teammates. It's only when Indiana is involved that suddenly everyone forgets logic, and it's not just outsiders. Even players who were once loved, Sophie Cunningham is the perfect example, get the same treatment. People despised her until she joined the Fever, then every negative narrative doubled overnight. It's like clockwork. Colson just happens to be the latest target, and because she lives online and doesn't filter herself, she's become the lightning rod. That's what makes this story so crazy. Fans aren't canceling her because she changed. They're canceling her for being the same person she's always been, just in a different jersey. And that's the part that makes Fever supporters furious. It proves the bias is real, and it proves the league's supposed growth is fragile, built on narratives instead of reality. So now fans are fuming. Fever supporters see the hypocrisy. They see their players treated differently, fouled harder, and dismissed faster. And when one of their own speaks up, loudly, unapologetically, the league and its so-called supporters act like it's the end of the world. Sydney Colson hasn't changed. The only thing that changed is that she dared to call out the system while wearing Indiana colors. And for that, they want her gone.
And she's there clapping back at these fans. And like, these are the people that, like, you know, would have been so much pro. Would have been so pro Sid Colson when she was on the Aces. And then they just turned. Then you've got this here, waking up hating like this. Just because it's the Indiana Fever.
The fallout from Sydney Colson's comments has now gone way past basketball. We're at the point where fans are dragging her entire personality, her character, and her career just because she dared to say the word assault about the way Kelsey Mitchell gets hacked on a nightly basis. And here's the kicker. This is the exact same word she's been using for years. She used it as an ace. She used it in post-game jokes. She used it in interviews where she clowned her own teammates. It was funny then. It was classic Sid. But now suddenly it's offensive, problematic, and cancel-worthy? That tells you this isn't about the word at all. It's about the fact that it came attached to a Fever jersey. It's the uniform, not the vocabulary, that set people off. Look at the timeline. Before Indiana, Sydney Colson was everyone's favorite personality. The funniest player in the WNBA, they said. The interviews went viral. The jokes hit Twitter trending topics. Media outlets ate it up because it was rare to have a player be that unfiltered. Now fast forward to today, she makes the same kind of remark and the reaction flips instantly. She's a problem. She's toxic. She's MAGA. MAGA? Really? That's the label we're throwing around because someone said referees were favoring the Sparks? That's how unserious this discourse has become. If calling out obvious corruption gets you labeled a political extremist, then half the NBA, NFL, and MLB players of the last 30 years would be tagged as MAGA too. It's lazy, and it's meant to silence. And here's where the league looks bad. Because when players like Colson speak out, the league does nothing to defend them. Nothing. They leave them twisting in the wind while fans rip them apart. And you know what that tells players? Shut up. Don't say anything. Don't question the officials. Just smile, run up and down the court, and take the abuse. That's the message being sent. And that's why Fever fans are livid. Because they can see what's happening. They've watched it all season with Caitlin Clark. They've watched it with Aaliyah Boston. They've watched it with Lexi Hull. And now, they're watching it happen to Sydney Colson too. The pattern is undeniable. The moment a player wears that Indiana jersey, the microscope intensifies and the treatment changes. Sophie Cunningham? Hated. Sydney Colson? Hated. Caitlin Clark? Public enemy number one. Aaliyah Boston? Questioned constantly. Even Lexi Hull, who literally just goes out and plays without talking, suddenly becomes a target. The Fever jersey is like a curse in the eyes of WNBA media and rival fans. And the Colson situation is the perfect proof. She didn't do anything different than what she's always done. The only difference is she's doing it as a Fever guard. And for that, she's being painted as the league's new villain. What makes this even more ridiculous is the actual substance of what she said. Was she wrong? Number. Kelsey Mitchell gets hacked. We've all seen it. Game after game, drive after drive, she's getting hammered and barely gets half the calls she deserves. And Sydney Colson saying she was ready to call her sister to file charges wasn't just a joke. It was a way of pointing out the absurdity of how physical teams are allowed to be with Fever players compared to everyone else. You don't have to love Indiana to admit the whistle disparity is obvious. But instead of addressing that truth, people just decided to kill the messenger. And this is where the hypocrisy really burns. Because the same fans who used to gas up Colson's sarcasm are now suddenly pearl-clutching about tone and word choice. Suddenly, sarcasm is dangerous. Suddenly, jokes are problematic. Suddenly, the same Sydney Colson that had media personalities laughing on panels is unprofessional. Really? Or is it just that she said it about the wrong team, in defense of the wrong teammate, and called out the wrong refs? If she had said the exact same thing while wearing an Aces jersey, they'd still be laughing. The proof is in the reactions. Even funnier, people are now dragging Kelsey Mitchell just to get at Colson. She's not a star. She doesn't belong in the MVP conversation, excuse me. Mitchell is literally third in the league in scoring on a playoff contending team. If that's not a star, what the hell is? If she was wearing a Liberty jersey or a Lynx jersey, these same critics would be lobbying for her to be an all-star starter. But because she's in Indiana, the narrative changes. That's why Fever fans are so defensive, because they see the way the narrative shifts depending on which team you play for. It's bias dressed up as analysis. And don't think the players don't notice. They see how fast love turns to hate the moment they step into Indiana. Sophie Cunningham used to be a villain across the league, sure, but once she put on the Fever jersey, the hate doubled. Suddenly, every flop was the crime of the century. Suddenly, every foul she drew was a conspiracy. Now, Sydney Colson's jokes, which once made her a fan favorite, are a reason to cancel her. It's predictable at this point. The Fever jersey comes with a built-in target, and Colson is just the latest to wear it. But here's the part that really exposes the fragility of the so-called WNBA fanbase. They can't handle being joked about. Think about it. These are the same people who laughed when Angel Reese mocked her critics, who clapped when players roasted each other online, who cheered when Colson cracked jokes about her own team back in the day. But now, when she cracks a joke about officiating, they want her fined, suspended, or worse. They can dish it out but can't take it. And that's the hallmark of insecurity, not fandom. If you can't handle a player joking about obvious foul calls, then maybe you shouldn't be in the comments section at all. And yes, it goes beyond fans. The league itself plays a role. The way officiating is handled has been questionable all season. Missed calls, bizarre technicals, inconsistent whistles, it's been a mess. And instead of addressing it, the league hides behind silence. No accountability, no transparency, just a cycle of bad calls and angry fans. So when someone like Colson says out loud what we've all been thinking, she becomes the scapegoat for frustration that should be directed at the refs and the commissioner's office. It's easier to cancel one player than to fix a broken system. The sad part is that this could have been an opportunity for the league to show maturity. To acknowledge, hey, maybe officiating needs review. Maybe we should listen when players raise concerns. Instead, it turned into a witch hunt against Colson, with fans branding her every insult they could think of. And the irony? This whole mess just proves her point. She said the refs were corrupt, and the reaction was to drown her out instead of proving her wrong. That silence speaks louder than any whistle. The Fever locker room, though, seems unbothered. If anything, moments like this make the team even tighter. When the outside world turns against you, you either break apart or bond stronger. And this Fever group looks bonded. Colson isn't being iced out. Her teammates are laughing with her, defending her, and carrying on. That's what scares the league, because the more they try to isolate Indiana, the more united Indiana becomes. It's a dynamic that's existed in sports forever. The hated team either crumbles or thrives on the hate. And if the Fever use it as fuel, this whole circus might backfire spectacularly on the league. So let's just call it what it is. Fans aren't really mad at Sydney Colson for being Sydney Colson. They're mad because she reminded everyone that the WNBA refs are not beyond criticism. And she did it while wearing the one jersey they hate the most. That's why they're calling for her head. That's why they're scrambling to paint her as something she's not. But guess what? Fever fans aren't buying it. They know exactly what's happening. And the louder the outrage gets, the clearer it becomes. Colson hit a nerve because she was right.